Hello there, you're watching All 24 News, World News Program live from Algiers. I'm Karim Zachary. Let's dive into tonight's top stories. Massacres across Gaza rage on. Dozens martyred in relentless Zionist raids, and hospitals near collapse as UNRWA hails Algeria's critical aid amid funding crisis. The Policario Front marks 52 years of resistance. Sahrawi leaders renew push for independence, condemning Morocco's war of extermination. Also in our news, US President Donald Trump brokers India-Pakistan ceasefire deal in place, but tensions flare as talks begin. And in Europe, leaders push for a 30-day unconditional truce in the Russia-Ukraine war. Moscow wants arms halt and the EU threatens tougher sanctions. More on these stories coming up next. Stay with us. Hello again and welcome back to the program. First in our news tonight, devastation in Gaza as Zionist airstrike leave at least 18 dead and dozens wounded. A tent sheltering displaced families in the Sabra neighborhood was hit, killing a couple and their 3 children. 7 more died in an attack on a crowd in the Tufah neighborhood, while a school housing displaced families in central Gaza was also struck, leaving 3 dead. Meanwhile, off Gaza's southern coast, Zionist gunfire killed 5 Palestinians, including a child and 2 fishermen. Shelling also hit a charity center and a boat, claiming more lives. In Deir el-Bala, a suicide drone attack on a displacement camp killed at least 4, including a freed prisoner, 2 children and a woman, with many more injured. This as the UN confirms its food supply warehouse was bombed, leaving 4 dead and dozens wounded. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Health Ministry reports that 23 more bodies and 124 wounded arrived at hospitals in the last 24 hours. Since the renewed wave of attacks began on March 18th, at least 2,701 people have been killed and over 7,400 injured. Overall, the ongoing Zionist assault has claimed more than 52,800 lives, with nearly 120,000 wounded. Meanwhile, the UN is sounding the alarm, calling the humanitarian crisis in Gaza the worst suffering since the Nakba in 1948. Adnan Abu Hasna, spokesperson for UNRWA, told our channel that death in general is closing in on Gaza civilians from 3 dire fronts: relentless bombing, crippling hunger, and rampant disease. Food stocks have completely run out, leaving warehouses empty and families desperate.
Not a single bottle of water, grain of wheat or box of medicine has entered the Gaza Strip since March 2nd, despite claims of aid deliveries like today, when it was reported that 2 fuel trucks had arrived. The Israeli side quickly denied it. The situation in Gaza is extremely dire and continues to deteriorate rapidly. Almost every hour a life is lost. The region remains besieged on 3 fronts, leaving civilians to face death by airstrikes, starvation or disease. This is the grim reality that defines the lives of thousands of innocent people.
On the same occasion, UNRWA spokesperson Adnan Abu Hasna warned that the agency could face a critical funding crisis within 2 months. Speaking to our channel, he cited a steep drop in international support, but praised countries stepping up to help, highlighting Algeria's key role in efforts to keep the agency afloat amid deepening humanitarian needs.
These allegations began after October 7th, while some countries were initially influenced and temporarily suspended their funding. Most of them have since resumed support, except for those that have permanently halted it, such as the US administration. At the same time, other nations stepped up to support UNRWA. with Algeria leading the way, having provided substantial funding last year. While currently facing a serious funding crisis, our available resources might only last until July, or the end of July at best. After that, we will face a critical shortfall. Nonetheless, we remain committed to our mission and continue to operate on all major fronts.
In Gaza still, hunger has become a weapon of war. Since the start of the Zionist assault, families have been forced to improvise just to survive. With flour nearly impossible to find, residents in Jabalia and beyond are grinding lentils, rice, even pasta to bake makeshift bread. It's a desperate adaptation in a place where food, just like safety, has become a daily struggle. Here's Sofian Kinturi with the report.
With border crossings sealed and food supplies dwindling, Gaza's residents have restored grinding lentils, rice and pasta into makeshift flour to bake bread. In the absence of aid and decrease in provisions, Gazans have shown remarkable cleverness, using whatever is left, often just scraps, to survive. These improvised flours are now the only means by which many can produce a daily loaf.
People are living in famine today, so they've turned to grinding lentils, pasta and rice instead of using flour. Of course, I can replace real flour and it doesn't produce the same quality of bread, but it's all that's available.
But time is running out. If the blockade continues, even these final reserves will soon be exhausted. Nothing will remain, not even crumbs.
Where has the humanity of the world gone? The world that watches us every day, for more than 60 days. Not even a glass of water has entered Gaza. Our people want to live. Our children want to eat. What is the fault of these children? What have they done to deserve this? There is no life without food. We will end up starving to death. The world must act. Consciences must awaken and look at us with mercy.
The ongoing Zionist siege has delivered on its most devastating threats. Over the past 19 months, Gaza has witnessed some of the most severe war crimes of recent history, with international law systematically and shamelessly ignored.
In another development, the Zionist entity has ratified a maritime transport agreement with Morocco aimed at boosting naval cooperation between the two sides. Signed in Rabat in May 2023, the deal covers navigation safety, fees, and mutual recognition of ship documents, along with a joint maritime committee. Meanwhile, reports reveal that Moroccan ports have received arms shipments destined for the entity after Spain refused docking rights in protest of the war in Gaza. In Morocco still, backlash is growing over expanded ties with the occupation. On Friday, local associations condemned the government's deepening normalization, now extending to economic and trade sectors. Rashid Filouli of the Moroccan Working Group for Palestine revealed that over 16 Moroccan companies are currently doing business with the entity, even as Palestinians face an ongoing genocide in Gaza.
We strongly condemn all forms of normalization and all those who normalize. Today, Zionist media reported the ratification of Morocco-Israel Maritime Navigation and Trade Cooperation Agreement that was signed last year, claiming it has now entered into force. It has not come into force today. The agreement still has 30 days to go. The agreement with the Zionist entity contradicts to Al-Aqsa flood battle. More than 16 Moroccan companies are conducting trade with Zionist entity at the height of the war.
To another development now, the Sahrawi people mark 52 years since the founding of the Policario Front, their liberation movement fighting for full sovereignty over Western Sahara. Saturday's anniversary comes amid renewed diplomatic momentum for the Sahrawi cause and rising tensions with Morocco. Here's Zahra Farjani with the details now.
The Policario Front, the recognized voice of the Sahrawi people, marks its 50th anniversary with renewed determination to achieve full independence and reclaim all occupied territories. Decades after Morocco breached the ceasefire agreement, the front remains committed to resistance, rejecting any political plan that sidesteps the Sahrawi people's right to decide their own future, a right backed by international law.
كما تعلمون
As you know, after decades of resisting Spanish colonialism and within the framework of the United Nations recognition of our people's legitimate struggle, our people at the time realized the need to strengthen their fight through a national liberation movement, rising up and adopting armed struggle as a means of liberation. We are speaking of over half a century of sacrifices, dedication, struggle and resistance, all to continue just struggle under the leadership of the legitimate and sole representative, the Policario Front, in order to achieve its non-negotiable goals of freedom and independence today and tomorrow.
Despite attempts to bury the cost through false narratives and backdoor deals, the Polisario has secured key diplomatic wins, including full membership in the African Union and major legal victories in European courts, affirming Western Sahara's distinct status from Morocco.
Sahrawi and human rights organizations from within the occupied territories of Western Sahara call upon international organizations and the United Nations to assume their responsibility in protecting our citizens from the oppression of the Moroccan occupying state.
As global solidarity grows, voices continue to call on the United Nations and the international community to act to end Moroccan repression and support the Sahrawi people's fight for freedom and justice.
And on a similar note, the Sahari Arab Democratic Republic is calling for an international investigation into enforced disappearances in Moroccan-occupied Western Sahara. Speaking at the African Commission on Human Rights and People's Rights in Banjul, Ambassador Ma'lainain Lekhal condemned the disappearances as crimes against humanity, urging the Commission to hold Morocco accountable and impunity and compensate victims. He warned that the systematic targeting of Sahrawis amounts to an act of genocide.
Enforced disappearance constitutes a crime against humanity and a systematic attack on human rights and collective memory. It remains one of the most horrific and prolonged human rights violations endured by the Sahrawi people. Due to the secretive nature of the ongoing enforced disappearances under Moroccan military occupation, it is difficult to confirm precise figures. Nevertheless, the Association of Families of Sahrawi Prisoners and Disappeared Persons documents thousands of cases, with many victims having been held in secret detention facilities for months or even years.
In a similar development, Bolivia has reiterated its commitment to strengthening ties with the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, offering congratulations to the new Sahrawi Foreign Minister Mohamed Islam Baysaid. In a letter, Bolivia's Foreign Minister Celinda Sosalundo expressed alignment with the Southern on key principles of sovereignty and self-determination. Meanwhile, in Mexico, the Sahrawi ambassador Mukhtar Labihi condemned ongoing human rights violations by Moroccan forces in Western Sahara and emphasized the urgent need for international protection for oppressed peoples under foreign occupation. To national news now. Algeria's Army General Saïd Chengriha, Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, has praised the role of the military installation corps in the country's post-independence history. Speaking at an annual meeting on Saturday, Chengriha highlighted the corps' contributions in both eradicating colonial remnants and its vital participation in national reconstruction efforts. He praised their involvement in major economic and social projects, while underscoring the Corps' key role in strengthening the foundations of Algeria's military and sovereignty.
The military installations, the first of which was established during a glorious liberation revolution and played an active role in it, have greatly contributed to the eradication of the remnants of colonialism following the recovery of our national independence.
In another story, French MPs and elected officials are once again calling for the French government to recognize the crimes committed during its colonial rule as genocide and war crimes. The renewed demand came during a ceremony commemorating the 80th anniversary of the 1945 massacres in Sétif, Algeria, where thousands of Algerians were killed. The ceremony is seen as a crucial step toward addressing historical wounds and paving the way for a new chapter in Franco-Algerian relations.
We had the opportunity to speak with the historian Benjamin Stora during a working session a year ago about the massacres of May 8, 1945. He considers that historical work on this matter has not yet begun in France, and they must begin so that there is recognition of the massacres committed by the colonial regime, acknowledging them as a crime of the state.
De ces massacres. Donc, bien évidemment que parce qu'il y a une partie de l'histoire.
The events of May 8, 1945 in Algeria are part of history and must be written and recognized so that both peoples can move forward. Historical work is non-negotiable. Write history literally. Algerians and others must talk about these events and massacres so that we can progress. Recognition is non-negotiable. If Algeria and France are to take new steps forward, recognition by the French state is not up for debate.
Ça fait partie de notre histoire.
Nous avons énormément de personnes.
We have a significant number of people from across the political spectrum, right, left and center, including senators, parliamentarians, mayors and municipal councillors. Our visit today is a message of peace and proof that we can build a bridge between the two shores. We truly want to work on developing cooperation between France and Algeria in various fields, whether political, economic or cultural. It can be said that thanks to this visit, great progress has been made.
Now to other topical development on Kashmir, where a US brokered ceasefire between India and Pakistan hangs in the balance. President Trump announced the deal as a breakthrough, but tensions flared almost immediately as India accused Pakistan of violations. More details from our own Yassine Rikti now.
It was billed as a turning point in South Asia's latest escalation, a comprehensive and immediate ceasefire between India and Pakistan, announced with great fanfare by US President Donald Trump.
After a long night of talks mediated by the United States, I'm pleased to announce that India and Pakistan have agreed to a comprehensive and immediate ceasefire. Congratulations to both countries for using common sense and great wisdom. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
The announcement came after intense behind-the-scenes diplomacy, reportedly involving around 30 countries, according to Pakistan's Foreign Minister, Ishaq Dar.
Pakistan and India have agreed to a complete, not partial, ceasefire. Around 30 countries took part in diplomatic efforts that led to this outcome. Pakistan has always sought to achieve peace and security in the region without compromising sovereignty or territorial integrity.
But the euphoria didn't last. Just hours later, India accused Pakistan of violating the deal after explosions were heard in Srinagar, the largest city in Indian-administered Kashmir. New Delhi also confirmed that measures taken after the deadly April 22nd attack, including visa bans, suspended trade and the freezing of the Indus Waters Treaty, remain firmly in place.
For the last few hours, there have been repeated violations of the understanding arrived at earlier this evening between the Directors General of Military Operations of India and Pakistan. This is a breach of the understanding arrived at earlier today. The armed forces are giving an adequate and appropriate response to these violations, and we take very, very serious notice of these violations.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirmed that talks between India and Pakistan have begun at a neutral venue aimed at addressing what he called a wide range of disputes. Meanwhile, the United Nations welcomed the ceasefire deal. Secretary General Antonio Guterres described it as a positive step toward ending hostilities and addressing long-standing tensions between the nuclear neighbors. In response to the truce, Pakistan reopened its airspace to all flights after days of closures and airport shutdowns due to escalating attacks. But the human toll continues to mount. In a devastating update, Pakistan's Information Minister for Kashmir, Mazhar Saeed Shah, told AFP that 13 people were killed, including a child and 4 women, and 56 others injured during overnight shelling by Indian forces along the line of control. As the guns fall silent or not, the world watches closely to see whether this ceasefire is a fleeting pause or the first step toward a lasting peace.
Moving on to another topical developments in Ukraine. Hopes for a ceasefire hang by thread. While Kiev and its European allies push for a 30-day truce, Russia demands an immediate halt to Western arms shipments, setting the stage for a dangerous standoff. Meanwhile, the UK tighten sanctions targeting Russian oil tankers and executives. Let's get more details with Salman Asib now.
Diplomatic efforts for a ceasefire in Ukraine seems to be reaching a critical juncture as tensions continue to rise between Kiev and Moscow. On Saturday, Ukraine and its European allies reached an agreement to call on Russia for an unconditional 30-day ceasefire set to begin next Monday. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiga confirmed that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held fruitful talks with the leaders of France, Britain, Germany, Poland, and US President Donald Trump, all committed to ensuring the ceasefire.
We agreed that starting Monday, May 12th, there should be a full and unconditional ceasefire at least for 30 days. Together, we demand this from Russia. We know that we have the support of the United States of America. We just talked to Donald Trump all together. We agreed on our common view and on our further actions. A full and unconditional ceasefire is very much needed. Accountability for a refusal is very much needed. Under the conditions of such ceasefire, we could together agree on the basis of peace.
However, the situation took a sharp turn when the Kremlin responded with demands. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov expressed skepticism about the usefulness of such a truce as he emphasized Russia's advancing position on the ground in its ongoing offensive.
This theme was long put forward by the Ukrainian side, and as soon as it was advanced by the US administration of Donald Trump, it was supported by President Vladimir Putin, with the reservation that it's very difficult to discuss this in detail if no answers are found to a large number of nuances around the notion of a ceasefire.
On the other side, Germany is pushing back against Russia's conditions. Chancellor Friedrich Merz threatened to tighten sanctions on Moscow if the truce is rejected. And in a show of solidarity with Ukraine, the United Kingdom has imposed sanctions on 100 Russian oil tankers and industry executives.
All 5 leaders here, all the leaders on the meeting we just had with the coalition of the willing, an unconditional ceasefire, rejecting Putin's conditions, and clear that if he turns his back on peace, we will respond, working with President Trump, with all our partners. We will ramp up sanctions and increase our military aid for Ukraine's defence to pressure Russia back to the table.
The UK's new sanctions package aims to increase pressure on Russia while sending a clear signal to the global community about the importance of holding Moscow accountable. With both diplomatic and economic moves on the table, the coming days will be critical in determining whether a temporary ceasefire will hold or if the battle for Ukraine will intensify further.
Moving on, in Sudan, at least 19 people were killed and 45 others injured when the Rapid Support Forces bombed a prison in North Kordofan. Local media reports indicate that the Al Ubaid prison was targeted by a drone strike, leading to the fatalities and injuries. The wounded victims were immediately treated at local hospitals. This attack marks another chapter in the ongoing violence in Sudan. And in Western Sudan, artillery shelling by the Rapid Support Forces killed 14 people and injured others at the Abu Shouk camp in North Darfur. Meanwhile, the RSF drones have continued bombing strategic locations in Port Sudan for the 7th consecutive day, targeting humanitarian aid centers and displacing thousands. Sudanese Air Force aircraft responded by attacking RSF positions in Yala and Al Ganaina, destroying military equipment. In a further escalation, an RSF airstrike on a power station in the River Nile and Red Sea states caused a major fire and widespread outages, some say. In Geneva, talks between Chinese Vice Premier and U.S. Treasury Secretary mark the beginning of efforts to de-escalate the ongoing trade war between the two countries. The discussions focus on reducing the U.S. trade deficit with China and addressing what Washington calls China's unfair economic practices. Beijing, however, demands tariff reductions and equal treatment on the global stage. The World Trade Organization welcomed the talks, calling them a constructive step towards easing tensions and creating a more stable global trade environment. On a related note, the U.S. administration has made it clear that President Donald Trump will not unilaterally reduce tariffs on Chinese imports unless Beijing takes a similar step. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt confirmed in a press conference that any changes to tariff policies will depend on the outcome of ongoing trade negotiations with China. And finally, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that his administration will maintain a 10% base tariff on all imports, even after finalizing trade deals. Speaking at a White House press conference, Trump mentioned that certain countries could receive exemptions if they offer significant trade terms. He expressed optimism about concluding new trade agreements in the coming weeks and revealed that he had given Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent several proposals on acceptable minimum tariffs.
You are going to always have a baseline. I mean, there could be an exception at some point. We'll see. You know, somebody does something exceptional for us. It's always possible. But basically, you have a baseline of a minimum of 10%. And some of them will be much higher, 40%, 50%, 60%, as they've been doing to us over the years.
That's the end of our news for tonight. For more updates, you can always visit our social media platforms as well as our website. I'm Karim Fazakari on behalf of All 24 News team. Thank you for tuning in. Take care.